The victory at Haven 7 was hard won, but it came at a cost. The colony lay battered and bruised, its streets littered with debris and its people exhausted from days of relentless fighting. Fires still smoldered in some areas, sending trails of smoke curling into the sky. Yet despite the destruction, there was a sense of triumph, fragile, fleeting, but undeniable. They had faced an overwhelming enemy and emerged victorious. Daniel Carter stood near the edge of the colony, watching as survivors worked to clear the wreckage. His body ached from the battle, his muscles sore from carrying heavy equipment and dodging enemy fire. But the physical pain was nothing compared to the weight of responsibility he felt. He had seen firsthand how fragile peace could be, and now he understood that war wasn't just about winning. It was about surviving long enough to rebuild. Rachel Moore approached him, her face streaked with dirt but her eyes bright with determination. She carried her ever-present data pad, though it looked battered after the recent chaos. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "I've been better," Daniel admitted, managing a faint smile. "But we made it through. That's what matters." Rachel nodded, glancing around at the scene before them. "It feels strange, doesn't it? Like, we won, but we're not really safe yet." "You're right," Daniel replied. "The barbarians will regroup. Whoever takes over for Gorthar won't stop until they finish what he started. Ethan." Blake joined them moments later, his expression grim. He had spent the past hour helping tend to the wounded, many of whom were in critical condition. "We got lucky this time," he said bluntly. "Next time we might not be so fortunate." Kayla Stone arrived shortly after, her presence commanding as always. Her armor was scratched and dented, and her usually sharp movements were slower, weighed down by fatigue. Still, she carried herself with quiet strength, refusing to let despair take hold. "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm. "All of us." The group gathered in the command center, which had been hastily repaired after the battle. Holographic displays flickered above the table, showing maps of Haven 7 and surrounding sectors. Kayla wasted no time getting to the point. "This victory isn't permanent," she began, her tone leaving no room for argument. "The barbarians will come back, and when they do, they'll bring everything they've got. We need to prepare for that." Daniel leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "Do we know where their forces are regrouping? Any leads on who's leading them now?" "Not yet," Kayla admitted, "but our scouts are keeping watch. For now, our priority is strengthening our defenses and securing resources. If we can hold out long enough, maybe we can buy ourselves some breathing room." Rachel spoke up, her voice tinged with urgency. "What about Earth? Can't they send reinforcements? Ships, weapons, anything?" Daniel hesitated before answering. "It's complicated. The Central Council is divided on how to handle this situation. Some see Haven 7 as expendable, a distant colony not worth the risk. Others recognize the threat the barbarians pose to all of humanity. Until they reach a consensus, we're on our own." Ethan let out a low whistle. "Great. So we're fighting, blind and outnumbered. We've faced worse," Kayla countered sharply. "And we've survived. That means something." Her words hung in the air, a reminder of the resilience they had shown in the face of overwhelming odds. Yet resilience alone wouldn't be enough to stop the barbarians when they returned. Everyone in the room understood that. Over the next few weeks, life on Haven 7 settled into a tense rhythm. Workers labored tirelessly to repair the colony's infrastructure, while engineers upgraded defensive systems to withstand another attack. Kayla organized training sessions for volunteers, teaching them basic combat skills and defensive tactics. Rachel continued to improve the surveillance network, setting up drones to patrol the skies and programming sensors to detect unusual activity in nearby space. Daniel focused on diplomacy, sending regular updates to Earth and pleading for support. Though responses were slow and often vague, he refused to give up hope. Humanity's survival depended on unity, and Haven 7 was proof that cooperation could overcome even the greatest challenges. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the group convened in the command center to review their progress. Kayla studied the holographic map intently, her fingers tracing potential weak points in their defenses. "We're doing everything we can," she said finally. but it might not be enough. There's always a chance, Ethan replied, his voice calm but resolute. As long as we keep fighting, there's a chance. Rachel nodded in agreement. And we're smarter now. We've learned from our mistakes. Daniel added, if we can rally other colonies to our side, we stand a better chance. Strength in numbers. Kayla considered his suggestion, then turned to Rachel. Can you reach out to nearby settlements? See if they're willing to join forces? I'll try, Rachel promised, but it won't be easy. Many of them are scared, and rightly so. They have every reason to be, Kayla acknowledged, but fear won't save them. Only action will. Days turned into weeks, and the pace of work never slowed. Slowly but surely, Haven 7 transformed into a fortress, its people united by a shared goal: survival. Morale improved as colonists saw tangible results from their efforts, and a renewed sense of hope began to take root. Then, one fateful night, alarms blared throughout the colony. Red lights flashed, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Scouts reported movement in deep space, dozens of ships larger and more advanced than anything they had faced before. They're here, Kayla announced grimly, addressing the assembled defenders. This is it. Whatever happens next, remember why we're fighting: for our homes, our families, and our future. As the barbarian fleet descended upon Haven 7, the defenders braced themselves for the coming storm. Their preparations had given them a fighting chance, but no amount of planning could fully prepare them for the fury of the enemy. Rachel monitored the incoming ships from the command center, her hands trembling slightly as she relayed coordinates to the fighters. They're spreading out, she shouted. Target their lead vessels. Ethan led a team of volunteers to the front lines, his weapon raised high. Stay sharp, he yelled. Don't let them break through. Kayla coordinated the defense, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. Hold the perimeter. Reinforce the south gate. Daniel stood beside Kayla, clutching a plasma rifle despite his lack of combat experience. What can I do? He asked, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. Stay close, Kayla ordered. We'll need your leadership if things go south. The battle raged on, the defenders holding their ground against overwhelming odds. Explosions lit up the sky, and the sound of gunfire echoed across the colony. Despite the intensity of the assault, the people of Haven 7 fought with courage and determination, inspired by the bonds they had forged in the face of adversity. Amidst the chaos, Rachel spotted something on her screens, a signal emanating from one of the barbarian ships. It matched the frequency used by Gorthor's flagship during the last attack. That's their command ship, she exclaimed. Take it out and the rest will fall apart. Kayla nodded, relaying the information to her fighters. Focus fire on that ship. Bring it down. With renewed purpose, the defenders concentrated. Their attacks on the command vessel. Plasma bolts streaked through the sky, striking the massive ship again and again. Finally, with a deafening explosion, the vessel broke apart, sending debris raining down onto the battlefield. The loss of their leader sowed confusion among the barbarians, causing their formation to falter. Seizing the opportunity, Kayla ordered a counterattack. The defenders pushed forward, driving the invaders back step by step until they retreated entirely. When the dust settled, the survivors erupted in cheers, their voices ringing out across the battered colony. Against all odds, they had won. In now, the aftermath, Daniel reflected on what they had achieved. Peace had collapsed and war had answered, not with destruction, but with unity and perseverance. Humanity wasn't perfect, but it was capable of greatness when pushed to its limits. As he gazed at the stars, Daniel knew the fight wasn't over. The barbarians would return, stronger and more dangerous than ever. But for now, Haven 7 stood as a beacon of hope, a testament to the power of resilience and cooperation. And as long as there were people willing to fight for a better future, humanity would endure. The stars twinkled above, cold and distant, but Daniel found comfort in their light. Each star represented a world, a colony, or a dream waiting to be realized. The road ahead would be difficult, and the scars of war would linger for generations. But as long as humanity remembered what it meant to stand together, there was hope. For now Haven 7 was safe, and sometimes that was enough. Ethan woke up with a start, his heart pounding as if it were trying to escape his chest. For a moment he lay still, staring at the smooth metallic ceiling above him. It was cold, unfamiliar, and utterly alien. Panic began to creep in when he realized he had no idea where he was, or even who he was. The last thing he could remember was nothing. There was just an empty void where his past should have been. He sat up slowly, wincing as a dull ache throbbed in his temples. His surroundings came into focus. A small, dimly lit room filled with strange machinery and glowing panels on the walls. Everything hummed faintly, a low vibration that seemed to seep into his bones. He looked down at himself. He was wearing a simple gray jumpsuit, unremarkable except for the fact that it wasn't something he recognized owning. A name tag stitched onto the left breast read Ryan, but the word meant nothing to him. Was that his name? Or someone else's? Ethan swung his legs over the edge of what appeared to be a medical bed and stood shakily. His body felt heavy, like it didn't quite belong to him. Taking a deep breath, he steadied himself against the wall and began to explore. The room was circular with no visible doors or windows. Instead, sections of the wall shimmered faintly, responding to his touch. When he pressed one of these panels, it slid open silently, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in soft blue light. The corridor stretched endlessly in both directions, curving slightly as though the structure was cylindrical. Ethan hesitated, unsure which way to go. Eventually, he chose right, driven by a vague sense that movement might jog his memory. As he walked, the ship, because it had to be a ship, given the lack of gravity and the hum of engines, seemed eerily quiet. No voices, no footsteps, not even the sound of air circulating through vents. It was as though he were completely alone. After several minutes of wandering, Ethan reached another doorway. This one opened automatically as he approached, leading him into a larger chamber. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, atop which rested a small, glowing device. It looked like a sphere encased in glass, pulsating softly with light that shifted between colors: blue, green, purple. Something about it drew him closer, almost magnetically. When Ethan touched the pedestal, the device activated. A hologram flickered to life, projecting the image of a woman directly in front of him. She was young, with short dark hair and sharp features. Her eyes locked onto his, though she couldn't possibly see him. This was clearly a recording. "Ethan," she said, her voice calm but tinged with urgency. "If you're seeing this, then things have gone worse than we hoped." Ethan froze. She knew his name, or at least she thought she did. Did that mean he really was Ethan? And if so, why did the name feel so foreign? "I don't know how much you remember," the woman continued, "but you need to listen carefully. You're in danger. They'll come for you soon, and you can't trust anyone, not even yourself. Whatever you do, stay away from the artifact. Do you understand?" Her words sent a chill down his spine. Artifact? What artifact? Before he could process her warning, the hologram paused as if waiting for a response. Then she added, "Lily. My name is Lily. Remember that." The projection vanished as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving Ethan standing there, more confused than ever. Who was Lily? Why had she recorded this message? And most importantly, who exactly were they? Determined to find answers, Ethan turned his attention back to the room. Along one wall, he noticed a series of screens displaying star charts and navigation data. One screen showed their current position, a vast expanse of space dotted with countless stars. Another displayed a countdown timer ticking steadily toward zero. He couldn't make sense of any of it, but the sight of those endless stars stirred something deep inside him. They were beautiful, yes, but also unsettling, as if they held secrets he wasn't ready to face. As Ethan studied the screens, a sudden noise startled him, a loud clang followed by the sound of footsteps echoing down the corridor outside. Someone else was aboard the ship. His pulse quickened. Had they arrived already? Lily's warning replayed in his mind. You can't trust anyone. Before he could decide what to do, the footsteps grew louder, approaching the doorway. Ethan instinctively ducked behind the pedestal, clutching the glowing sphere tightly in his hands. The door slid open, and a figure stepped inside. It was a man, tall and broad-shouldered, dressed in a dark uniform. His face was obscured by a helmet, but his stance radiated authority. "Who's there?" the man barked, his voice gruff and commanding. "Show yourself." Ethan held his breath, unsure whether to reveal himself or stay hidden. The man scanned the room, his gaze lingering on the pedestal. After a tense moment, he muttered something under his breath and moved closer. Just as he reached for the device, Ethan acted on impulse, stepping out from his hiding spot. "Stay back!" Ethan shouted, raising the sphere defensively. The man froze, his hand hovering near a weapon strapped to his side. "Easy," the man said, his tone shifting from aggression to caution. "I'm not here to hurt you. Name's Carter. I'm part of a salvage crew. We picked up your distress signal." Ethan frowned, gripping the sphere tighter. "Distress signal?" "I didn't send one." Carter tilted his head, studying Ethan carefully. "No, you wouldn't have. Not in your condition. Look, kid, I don't know what happened to you, but you're lucky we found you. This ship's been drifting out here for years. Abandoned." Years? That didn't make sense. If the ship had been abandoned, how had Ethan ended up on it? And why couldn't he remember anything before waking up? None of it added up. "What is this place?" Ethan asked cautiously, lowering the sphere slightly. "And what's this artifact everyone keeps talking about?" Carter's expression hardened. "Artifact? Where'd you hear about that?" "From her," Ethan replied, nodding toward the pedestal. "A woman named Lily. She left me a message." For a split second, Carter looked genuinely surprised. Then his mask of indifference slipped back into place. "Lily's long gone," he said flatly. "But she was right about one thing. You're in over your head. Hand over the sphere and let us handle the rest." Ethan hesitated. Something about Carter's demeanor set off alarm bells in his mind. Trust no one, Lily had warned. Yet here he was, stranded in the middle of nowhere, with a stranger demanding answers he didn't have. Still, Carter hadn't attacked him yet. Maybe he really was here to help. "Fine," Ethan said finally, holding out the sphere. "But you're going to tell me everything you know." Carter nodded, reaching for the device. But just as their fingers brushed against it, the sphere flared brightly, emitting a high-pitched whine that made both men stagger backward. Ethan dropped it reflexively, and the glow faded as quickly as it had surged. "What the hell was that?" Carter demanded, glaring at Ethan. "I don't know," Ethan snapped, backing away. "Maybe you should have explained what this thing does before asking me to hand it over," Carter sighed, rubbing his temples. "Look, kid, we don't have time for this. We need to get off this ship before—" He never finished his sentence. A deafening roar shook the vessel, throwing both men off their feet. Alarms blared, red lights flashing throughout the room. Ethan scrambled to his knees, clutching the pedestal for support. "What's happening?" he yelled over the noise. Carter cursed under his breath. "We're being boarded. Someone else knows you're here." Ethan's stomach dropped. Boarded? By whom? And why did they want him? All he had were questions, each more unsettling than the last. But one thing was clear. Staying put wasn't an option. Without another word, Ethan grabbed the sphere and bolted for the exit, leaving Carter, shouting after him. Whatever was coming, he wasn't going to wait around to find out. Ethan sprinted down the narrow corridor, his breath coming in ragged gasps as the ship rocked violently around him. The sphere he clutched tightly in his hands pulsed faintly, its glow casting eerie shadows on the walls. Behind him, Carter's voice echoed through the chaos, shouting orders to unseen crew members. Ethan didn't look back. He couldn't afford to slow down, not when every second felt like it might be his last. The alarms blared louder, a relentless wail that seemed to pierce straight into his skull. Red emergency lights flashed in sync with the noise, bathing the hallway in a strobe-like effect that made it hard to focus. Each step forward felt heavier than the last, as if the very air was resisting him. Despite the confusion and fear gripping, his mind, one thought, kept pushing him onward. Survival. Whatever was happening, whoever was coming for him, Ethan knew instinctively that staying still meant certain capture. Or worse. He rounded a corner and skidded to a halt. Ahead of him, the corridor split into two paths. One led deeper into the bowels of the ship, while the other sloped upward toward what looked like an open hatch. Beyond the hatch, Ethan could see stars twinkling against the endless blackness of space. His heart raced at the sight. Was that an escape route? Or a trap waiting to lure him out? Before he could decide, footsteps thundered behind him. Carter appeared at the end of the corridor, flanked by two other figures in similar dark uniforms. Their faces were obscured by helmets, but their weapons, long, sleek rifles, were pointed directly at Ethan. "Stop right there." Carter barked, his voice cutting through the din of the alarms. "You don't know what you're doing." Ethan hesitated, torn between running and standing his ground. The sphere in his hands pulsed again, brighter this time, as if responding to his rising panic. He glanced at it, then back at Carter. Something about the man's tone gave him pause. Not quite anger, but frustration mixed with concern. It didn't make sense. Why would someone chasing him sound worried? "I'm not handing this over until I get some answers," Ethan shouted, holding up the sphere. His voice trembled, betraying the fear bubbling beneath his words. "Who are you people? What do you want from me?" Carter took a cautious step forward, lowering his weapon slightly. "We're not your enemy, kid. We're here to help. But if you keep running, you're going to get yourself killed." "Help?" Ethan spat, backing away slowly. "You call pointing guns at me help? And what about her?" He gestured toward the pedestal where Lily's hologram had appeared earlier. "She told me not to trust anyone, not even myself." For a brief moment, Carter's expression softened. He exchanged a glance with one of his companions, who nodded silently. Then he turned back to Ethan, his voice quieter now. "Lily, she was part of something bigger than you can imagine. Something dangerous. If she warned you, then you need to listen. But right now, we've got bigger problems." As if on cue, the ship shuddered violently again, nearly knocking Ethan off his feet. A loud metallic groan reverberated through the walls, followed by the unmistakable sound of drilling. Somewhere outside, someone, or something, was trying to break in. "What is that?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "That," Carter replied grimly, "is why we need to move. Now." Ethan hesitated, weighing his options. On one hand, trusting Carter went against every warning Lily had given him. On the other, staying put felt like signing his own death warrant. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded reluctantly. "Fine, but if you try anything, we won't," Carter interrupted, raising his hand slightly in a gesture of surrender. "Just stick close and do exactly what I say." With no better plan, Ethan followed Carter and his team down the left-hand corridor, deeper into the ship. The path twisted and turned, leading them through increasingly cramped spaces filled with exposed wires and flickering panels. The hum of the engines grew louder, almost deafening as they descended further. At one point, Ethan stumbled over a loose cable, nearly dropping the sphere. When he caught himself, he noticed how tightly his fingers were clenched around it. His knuckles were white, his palms slick with sweat. For some reason, letting go felt impossible, like the sphere itself was anchoring him to reality. Eventually, they reached a large chamber dominated by a massive console covered in blinking lights and switches. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical tank filled with a swirling, luminescent liquid. Floating inside the tank was what appeared to be a humanoid figure, suspended in stasis. Its features were obscured by the fluid, but something about its shape sent a chill down Ethan's spine. "What is that?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the growing racket outside. "That," Carter said, "is the artifact." Ethan frowned, confused. "But I thought the artifact was this." He held up the sphere, which pulsed weakly in response. Carter shook his head. "No, that's just a key, a fragment of the real thing. The artifact is much bigger, much more powerful, and whoever's boarding us wants it bad enough to tear this ship apart." Ethan stared at the tank, his mind racing. The figure inside looked eerily familiar, though he couldn't place why. Was it human? Alien? Something else entirely? Before he could ask another question, the wall behind them erupted in a shower of sparks and debris. A jagged hole opened up, revealing the cold vacuum of space beyond. Figures clad in bulky exosuits poured through the breach, their movements mechanical and precise. "Intruders!" one of Carter's teammates yelled, raising his weapon. "Hold your fire!" Carter commanded sharply. "They're not after us, they're after him." He pointed at Ethan. Ethan's stomach dropped. Him? Why would anyone come all this way just for him? He tightened his grip on the sphere, feeling its warmth seep into his skin. Whatever it was, it clearly had value. Value that others were willing to kill for. The intruders advanced steadily, ignoring Carter and his team entirely. Their focus was locked solely on Ethan. As they drew closer, one of them raised a device that emitted a high-pitched whine, the same kind of sound that had caused the sphere to flare earlier. Instinctively, Ethan stepped back, shielding the sphere with his body. "Don't let them take it," Carter shouted, firing a warning shot near the lead intruder's feet. The figure paused momentarily, then resumed its approach without hesitation. Ethan's mind raced. There was no way out. Even if he ran, the intruders would catch him before he could find safety. Desperation bubbled up inside him, mixing with the strange energy radiating from the sphere. Without thinking, he pressed his palm flat against its surface. A surge of power coursed through him, so intense it knocked him off his feet. The sphere flared brilliantly, emitting a wave of light that engulfed the entire room. The intruders staggered backward, shielding their visors as their equipment sparked and failed. Carter and his team ducked for cover, yelling incoherently. Ethan, meanwhile, felt as though his very soul was being pulled apart and stitched back together again. Images flooded his mind, flashes of distant planets, battles fought among the stars, and a woman's face staring at him with tears in her eyes. Lily. When the light faded, Ethan found himself lying on the floor, the sphere still clutched in his trembling hands. The intruders were gone, retreating back through the hole they had created. Carter knelt beside him, concern etched across his face. "Kid," he said softly, "what did you just do?" Ethan shook his head, struggling to sit up. I don't know." His voice cracked, raw with emotion. "But I think I'm starting to remember." Carter helped him to his feet, glancing nervously at the damaged wall. "Remember what?" "Everything," Ethan whispered. "And nothing. Not yet." Before Carter could respond, the ship lurched, violently once more, throwing them both against the console. Warning sirens blared anew, and a robotic voice announced over the intercom, "Hull integrity compromised. Evacuate immediately." Carter cursed under his breath. "We're out of time. Grab onto something because we're getting out of here now." Ethan nodded numbly, clutching the sphere tighter than ever. Whatever lay ahead, he knew one thing for certain. The answers he sought weren't going to come easily, and the journey to find them would take him farther than he'd ever imagined. The ship was falling apart around them, its once smooth hum now a cacophony of groans and screeches. Sparks rained down from the ceiling as wires snapped loose, and the floor tilted dangerously beneath their feet. Ethan clung to the sphere, his knuckles white with tension, while Carter barked orders to his team over the chaos. "Secure the hatch," Carter yelled, pointing at one of his crew members. "We need to stabilize this section before we all get sucked into space." Ethan barely registered the words. His mind was still reeling from what had just happened. The surge of energy, the flood of fragmented memories, and the eerie feeling that the sphere in his hands was somehow alive. He glanced down at it again, watching as its faint glow pulsed, rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. It felt warm against his skin, comforting yet unsettling at the same time. What was it? Why did it respond to him? "Kid!" Carter's sharp voice snapped Ethan out of his thoughts. "You with me?" Ethan nodded quickly, though he wasn't sure how much of himself was truly with anyone anymore. The weight of everything pressing down on him made it hard to think straight. But one thing was clear. Staying here meant certain death. Carter. motioned for Ethan to follow him as they moved toward the damaged wall where the intruders had breached the ship. The jagged hole gaped open, revealing the cold vastness of space beyond. Debris floated lazily outside, caught in the gravitational pull of the dying vessel. One of Carter's crew members, a wiry man named Blake, was already working to seal the breach using a portable welding tool. The smell of burning metal filled the air, acrid and suffocating. "We can't stay here," Carter said, turning back to Ethan. "This whole section could collapse any second. We need to get to the shuttle bay." Ethan hesitated. "What about them?" he asked, nodding toward the retreating figures of the intruders who were now disappearing into the void outside. "They'll come back." "They might," Carter admitted grimly. "But right now our priority is getting you and that sphere off this ship. Whatever's going on here, it's bigger than all of us." Ethan didn't argue. He didn't have the energy to fight or question anymore. Instead, he followed Carter and his team as they navigated through the crumbling corridors, dodging falling debris and avoiding sections of the ship that were rapidly depressurizing. Each step felt heavier than the last, not just because of the physical strain, but because of the growing sense of dread in his chest. Something about this place, the ship, the artifact, even the stars outside, felt wrong, like pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit together. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the shuttle bay. A small craft sat docked in the corner, sleek and compact compared to the massive derelict ship they were leaving behind. Its engines hummed softly, ready to launch at a moment's notice. Carter ushered everyone inside, double-checking their oxygen levels and securing the hatch before taking his seat at the controls. As the shuttle detached from the larger ship, Ethan stared out the viewport, watching as the derelict drifted further away. For a brief moment, he thought he saw movement near the breach, a shadowy figure watching them leave, but it disappeared as quickly as it had appeared. He shook his head, unsure if it was real or just his imagination playing tricks on him. Once they were safely underway, Carter turned his attention back to Ethan. "All right, kid," he said, leaning forward in his chair. "Time to talk. What exactly did you do back there?" Ethan swallowed hard, gripping the sphere tightly. "I don't know," he admitted. "I just touched it, and then everything went crazy. I saw things, flashes of places, people, battles. And Lily, she was there." Carter exchanged a glance with Blake, who looked equally uneasy. "Lily," Carter muttered under his breath. "Figures she'd still be pulling strings, even after all this time." "Who is she?" Ethan demanded, frustration creeping into his voice. "And why does everyone keep talking about her like she's some kind of ghost?" Carter sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "She's not a ghost, at least not literally. Lily was part of Nexus Corp, a private organization that specializes in well, let's just say they're not exactly known for playing by the rules. They dabble in tech most governments wouldn't touch, pushing boundaries no one else dares to cross." "And the artifact?" Ethan pressed, gesturing toward the glowing sphere in his lap. "What's it got to do with her?" "That's the million-dollar question," Carter replied. "From what little we know, the artifact isn't just some piece of advanced tech. It's something ancient, something alien. Nexus Corp stumbled across it years ago during one of their deep space expeditions. Rumor has it they tried to harness its power, but something went wrong. Real wrong." Ethan frowned, piecing together the fragments of information. "So what? You think I'm connected to it somehow? Is that why those people came after me?" Carter hesitated, clearly weighing his next words carefully. "Honestly, kid, I don't know. But whatever's inside that sphere, it's tied to you. That much is obvious. And if Nexus Corp sent those intruders after you, then they're not planning to let you go anytime soon." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. "Why me?" he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. "Why am I involved in all this?" Before Carter could answer, another voice spoke up from the back of the shuttle. It belonged to Mia, the youngest member of Carter's team. She'd been quiet until now, observing silently from the shadows. But when she finally spoke, her tone was firm and unwavering. "Because you're not who you think you are," she said simply. All eyes turned to her, including Ethan's. Her expression was unreadable, a mixture of sadness and determination. Slowly, she unfastened her safety harness and stepped forward, stopping just a few feet away from Ethan. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked cautiously, his grip tightening on the sphere. Mia hesitated, glancing at Carter as if seeking permission. When he gave a slight nod, she continued, "My brother, he disappeared 3 years ago. Vanished without a trace. No ransom demands, no clues, nothing. Just gone. At first we thought it was pirates or slavers, but then I started hearing rumors about Nexus Corp, about experiments they were conducting on humans. People who vanished, just like him." Ethan's stomach churned. "Experiments?" Mia nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. "They call it enhancement, taking ordinary people and turning them into something else, something more. My brother was one of them. Or at least that's what I believe." Ethan stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. Could it be true? Was he one of those enhanced individuals? The thought made his skin crawl, but deep down he couldn't deny the possibility. The flashes of memory, the strange connection to the sphere, it all pointed to something unnatural, something beyond human comprehension. "I don't remember anything," Ethan said finally, his voice hollow. "If I was part of this enhancement program, then why can't I remember?" "That's the thing," Mia replied. "You're not supposed to. Nexus Corp wipes your memories clean before they send you out into the field. They make you forget who you were so you can become whatever they need you to be." Ethan felt sick. The idea of having his identity stripped away, erased like it never existed, it was horrifying. Yet strangely, it also explained so much. The gaps in his memory, the nagging sense of being incomplete, the way the sphere seemed to resonate with him on a level he couldn't understand. It all made a twisted kind of sense. "So, what happens now?" Ethan asked, looking from Mia to Carter. "Where do we go from here?" Carter leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "That depends on you, kid. If you want answers, we'll have to find them ourselves. Nexus Corp isn't going to roll out the welcome mat, and they sure as hell aren't going to give us the truth. But if we're careful and lucky, we might be able to piece together enough to figure out what they did to you. And maybe, just maybe, reverse it." Ethan nodded slowly, his resolve hardening. He didn't know who he was or what he had become, but one thing was certain. He wasn't going to let Nexus Corp control his fate. Not anymore. As the shuttle sped through the endless expanse of stars, Ethan stared out the viewport, clutching the sphere tightly in his hands. Somewhere out there, among the infinite lights, lay the truth, and he was determined to find it, even if it cost him everything. The shuttle drifted silently through the void, its engines dialed down to minimal power to avoid detection. Ethan sat in the dimly lit cabin, his gaze fixed on the glowing sphere resting in his lap. Its faint light pulsed rhythmically, a steady reminder of the power it held and the burden it carried. He felt exhausted, both physically and mentally, but sleep was impossible. Every time he closed his eyes, fragments of memories flashed unbidden in his mind. Battles fought among alien landscapes, Lily's tear-streaked face, and an overwhelming sense of loss he couldn't quite place. Mia sat nearby, her knees pulled up to her chest as she stared out the viewport at the endless expanse of stars. Her expression was distant, lost in thoughts she didn't share. Carter remained at the controls, his sharp eyes scanning the instruments for any sign of pursuit. Despite their narrow escape from the warship, none of them believed they were truly safe. Nexus Corp wouldn't give up so easily, not when they had invested so much in finding Ethan in the sphere. "We need to talk about what happens next," Carter said finally, breaking the heavy silence. His tone was calm but firm, demanding attention. "We can't keep running forever." Ethan looked up, meeting Carter's gaze. "You're right, but where do we go? Every move we make seems to lead straight back to them." Carter nodded grimly. "That's because Nexus Corp has eyes everywhere. Governments, corporations, even freelance scavengers like us. They've got connections that run deep. If we want to stay ahead of them, we'll have to cut ties completely. Go dark. Go dark? Mia echoed, turning to face him. What does that mean? It means no more stops at spaceports, no communications with anyone outside this ship, Carter explained. We find a remote location, somewhere off the grid, and lie low until we figure out our next move. Ethan frowned, uncertainty creeping into his voice. And then what? Hide forever? No, Carter replied sharply. Hiding isn't the plan. It's just buying us time. Once we're settled, we start digging. Find out everything we can about Nexus Corp, the artifact, and whatever they did to you. Knowledge is power, kid. Right now they hold all the cards. We need to change that. Ethan mulled over Carter's words, weighing the risks. Going off-grid sounded dangerous, possibly even reckless, but sitting around waiting for Nexus Corp to catch up wasn't an option either. Slowly, he nodded. All right, let's do it. Carter gave a curt nod before returning his focus to the controls. Good. I know a place. An old mining station abandoned decades ago. It's not pretty, but it's isolated. Perfect for laying low. As the shuttle adjusted course, Ethan leaned back in his seat, his fingers tracing the smooth surface of the sphere. He couldn't shake the feeling that the artifact was alive, watching him, waiting for something. Each pulse of light seemed to echo in his chest, stirring emotions he couldn't fully understand. Was it guiding him? Or was it testing him? Hours passed in tense silence as the shuttle approached its destination. Finally, Carter announced their arrival. There it is, he said, pointing toward the viewport. Outside, a jagged asteroid loomed into view, its surface pockmarked with craters and scars from centuries of mining operations. Nestled within one of the larger craters was the station, a hulking structure made of rusted metal and reinforced glass. It's charming, Mia muttered dryly, earning a brief smirk from Carter. Looks aren't everything, he shot back. It'll keep us hidden. The shuttle docked smoothly, and the trio disembarked cautiously, weapons drawn. The air inside the station was stale and cold, carrying the faint metallic tang of decay. Dust coated every surface, and the walls groaned softly under the weight of years of neglect. Still, it was intact enough to provide shelter, and the lack of recent activity suggested it hadn't been discovered by scavengers, or worse. Carter led the way to the central control room, where he began powering up the station's systems. Lights flickered to life, casting harsh shadows across the barren halls. Meanwhile, Ethan and Mia explored the living quarters, clearing debris and setting up makeshift beds. Once the basic necessities were taken care of, Carter called everyone together for a meeting. This place won't protect us indefinitely, he warned. Sooner or later, someone will come looking. Until then, we use the time wisely. Start researching Nexus Corp, the artifact, anything that might give us leverage. I'll help, Mia offered immediately. I've spent years piecing together clues about my brother's disappearance. I know where to look. Ethan hesitated, unsure how he could contribute. Fighting Nexus Corp felt like a losing battle, especially since he still didn't fully understand his own role in all of this. Sensing his unease, Mia placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. You've already done more than you realize, she said softly. That sphere chose you for a reason. Trust in that. Her words brought a small measure of comfort, though doubt lingered in the back of his mind. Trust wasn't easy. Not after everything he'd been through. Still, he nodded. All right, let's get to work. Over the next several days, the group threw themselves into their tasks. Carter focused on fortifying the station's defenses, rigging traps and sensors to alert them of intruders. Mia scoured old data logs and encrypted files, searching for any mention of Nexus Corp or the artifact. And Ethan practiced. Using the sphere became easier with each attempt, though it never stopped feeling strange. The energy it channeled surged through him like electricity, leaving his body tingling and his mind buzzing. At first, he used it for simple things, lighting up dark corners, sealing cracks in the walls, creating barriers to block imaginary threats. But as his confidence grew, so did his experiments. One evening, while the others were busy with their own projects, Ethan ventured outside the station. The asteroid's surface was eerily quiet, bathed in the pale glow of a distant star. He stood alone, holding the sphere in both hands, and closed his eyes. Focusing on the pulsing warmth in his palms, he imagined pulling energy from the surrounding void. Slowly, the sphere began to glow brighter, its light spreading outward in waves that illuminated the rocky terrain. When Ethan opened his eyes, he gasped. Hovering above him was a shimmering orb of pure energy, crackling with power. It moved, with his thoughts responding to even the smallest shifts in his focus. For a moment he felt invincible, like nothing could touch him. But the sensation was fleeting. The effort drained him quickly, forcing him to release the energy before collapsing to his knees. "You're pushing yourself too hard," a familiar voice said behind him. Ethan turned, startled, to see Mia standing a few feet away. She must have followed him without him noticing. "How long have you been there?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Long enough to see you nearly pass out," she replied, crouching beside him. "You can't keep doing this, Ethan. You're not indestructible." "I know," he admitted, staring at the sphere in his hands. "But I need to get stronger. If I'm going to fight Nexus Corp, I have to be ready." "And you will be," Mia assured him. "But not if you burn yourself out before we even get started. Take it slow. Build your strength gradually." Ethan sighed, knowing she was right. Using the sphere came at a cost, one he wasn't sure he could afford in the long run. Still, he couldn't ignore the potential it offered, or the responsibility it carried. Back inside the station, Mia shared her findings with the group. She had uncovered fragments of classified documents detailing Nexus Corp's experiments on human subjects. According to the files, the corporation sought to create perfect soldiers, capable of wielding advanced technology beyond normal human comprehension. Many test subjects had died during the process, their bodies unable to handle the strain. Others had vanished entirely, presumed failures. "There's more," Mia added grimly. "Some of the notes mention a prototype. Subject who survived and excelled. They called it Project Horizon. Sound familiar?" Ethan's blood ran cold. "You think that's me?" "It fits," Carter interjected. "Your connection to the sphere, your ability to harness its power. It's exactly what they were trying to achieve." "But why erase my memories?" Ethan demanded. "Why send me out here only to hunt me down again?" "That's the part we don't know yet," Carter admitted. "Maybe they lost control of you. Maybe you became too dangerous to keep around, or maybe—" He trailed off, his expression darkening. "Maybe what?" Ethan pressed. "Maybe they never intended for you to survive this long," Carter finished quietly. The room fell silent, the weight of his words hanging heavily in the air. Ethan clenched his fists, anger boiling beneath the surface. No matter what Nexus Corp had planned for him, he refused to be their pawn any longer. "We'll stop them," Mia said firmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "Whatever it takes," Ethan nodded, determination hardening in his chest. He didn't know what lay ahead, but one thing was certain. He wouldn't face it alone. Together, they would uncover the truth and take down Nexus Corp once and for all. The days turned into weeks as Ethan, Mia, and Carter settled into a tense routine at the abandoned mining station. The isolation was oppressive, but it gave them time to prepare for the inevitable confrontation with Nexus Corp. Each of them had their role to play. Carter fortified the station's defenses, Mia dug deeper into classified files, and Ethan continued practicing with the sphere, pushing himself to master its power. Despite their progress, the looming threat of Nexus Corp weighed heavily on all of them. One evening, as Ethan sat alone in the control room, staring at the sphere in his hands, a sudden alert flashed across the monitors. Carter rushed in moments later, his face pale. "We've got company," he said grimly, pointing at the screen. A fleet of ships was approaching the asteroid, their sleek designs unmistakably belonging to Nexus Corp. "How did they find us?" Mia asked, her voice trembling as she joined them. They must have tracked our shuttle's trajectory after the last encounter, Carter replied. We underestimated them. Ethan clenched his fists, his heart pounding. What do we do now? Carter glanced at him, his expression hardening. We fight, or die trying. The trio sprang into action, activating the traps Carter had set up around the station. Alarms blared as the enemy ships began landing outside, their troops disembarking, with precision. The first wave of intruders breached the station's outer doors, only to trigger a series of explosions that sent debris flying. But Nexus Corp's forces were relentless, advancing steadily despite the chaos. Ethan stood in the central chamber, gripping the sphere tightly. Its glow intensified as adrenaline surged through his veins. He could feel the energy coursing through him, stronger than ever before. This was it, the moment he'd been preparing for. As the first group of soldiers entered the room, weapons raised, Ethan unleashed the sphere's power. A wave of energy erupted from the artifact, knocking the intruders off their feet and disabling their equipment. But using the sphere came at a cost. Ethan staggered, his vision swimming as exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. Mia appeared at his side, steadying him. You can't keep doing this alone, she urged. Let me help. Before Ethan could respond, Carter shouted from the doorway. More are coming. We need to fall back. Reluctantly, Ethan followed Mia and Carter deeper into the station, retreating toward the core where they hoped to make their final stand. Along the way, they triggered more traps, slowing Nexus Corp's advance but not stopping it entirely. The enemy was too numerous, too well equipped. As they reached the core chamber, Carter sealed the heavy blast doors behind them. This is it, he said, checking his weapon. If we don't hold them here, we're done. Mia knelt by a console, frantically typing commands. I'm trying to overload the station's reactor. If we can't stop them, we'll at least take this place and the sphere with us. No, Ethan said firmly, stepping forward. The sphere stays with me. It's the key to everything. Carter and Mia exchanged uneasy glances but didn't argue. They knew Ethan was right, even if it meant risking their lives to protect him. The sound of drilling echoed through the walls as Nexus Corp's forces worked to breach the blast doors. Ethan closed his eyes, focusing all his energy on the sphere. Memories flooded his mind once again, Lily's voice whispering encouragement, battles fought under alien skies, the endless expanse of stars stretching beyond comprehension. He felt a surge of clarity as though the artifact itself was guiding him. When the doors finally gave way, a swarm of soldiers poured into the chamber surrounding them. At the center of the group stood a tall figure clad in a pristine white uniform. Her sharp features and cold demeanor marked her as someone in command. She stepped forward, her gaze locking onto Ethan. Ryan, she said calmly, her voice dripping with authority. Or should I say, Project Horizon. You've caused quite a bit of trouble. Ethan stiffened at the name. Ryan. That was who he used to be, or at least part of who he used to be. He tightened his grip on the sphere, refusing to let her intimidate him. Who are you? My name is Dr. Monroe, she replied, and I designed you. Her words hit like a punch to the gut. Designed him? The implications were horrifying, yet somehow unsurprising. Ethan forced himself to stay focused. Why are you here? To reclaim what belongs to Nexus Corp, Dr. Monroe answered simply. The artifact is far too dangerous to leave in your hands or anyone else's. And what about me? Ethan demanded. Am I just another experiment to you? Dr. Monroe tilted her head slightly, studying him with clinical detachment. You were never supposed to survive this long. Your existence is an anomaly, one we intend to correct. Rage boiled within Ethan, fueling the energy radiating from the sphere. He wouldn't let her or anyone else dictate his fate. With a deep breath, he channeled the artifact's power, letting it flow through him completely. The sphere flared brilliantly, bathing the room in blinding light. Soldiers screamed as their weapons malfunctioned, collapsing to the ground in agony. Dr. Monroe shielded her eyes, visibly shaken but unyielding. "You don't understand what you're doing," she shouted over the noise. "The artifact will consume you. You're not strong enough to control it." "I don't care," Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the strain. "I won't let you use me or this thing for your own twisted purposes." The energy surged again, more intense than before. Cracks began forming in the walls as the station groaned under the pressure. Carter grabbed Mia's arm, pulling her toward the exit. "We need to go. Now." Ethan hesitated, torn between staying to finish the fight and escaping with his friends. Finally, Mia's voice cut through the chaos. "Ethan, please, we can't lose you." Something in her plea broke through his resolve. Nodding sharply, Ethan released the sphere's energy, causing one final pulse that knocked everyone, including himself, to the ground. The artifact dimmed, its glow fading to a faint flicker. Dr. Monroe lay unconscious among the wreckage, her soldiers incapacitated. "Let's move," Carter barked, helping Ethan to his feet. Together, the trio fled the collapsing station, racing toward the shuttle docked nearby. Behind them, the reactor overloaded, triggering a massive explosion that consumed the entire asteroid in a fiery blaze. As the shuttle soared away from the destruction, Ethan collapsed into a seat, clutching the sphere tightly. His body ached, his mind reeling from the effort of controlling the artifact. Mia knelt beside him, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "You stopped them." "For now," Carter added grimly from the pilot seat. "But they'll come after us again. Nexus Corp doesn't give up easily." Ethan nodded, knowing Carter was right. This wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. But for the first time, he felt a sense of purpose. The sphere had chosen him for a reason, and he intended to honor that choice. "We'll keep fighting," Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with determination. "No matter what it takes." Mia smiled faintly, her eyes shining with hope. Together, as the shuttle sailed into the vast expanse of space, the endless stars stretched out before them, offering both danger and opportunity. Ethan gazed at the horizon, feeling a strange mix of fear and excitement. Whatever lay ahead, he was ready to face it, not as a weapon or a tool, but as himself. And with his friends by his side, he knew they could overcome anything Nexus Corp threw at them. For now, they were safe. For now, they were free. And in the quiet moments between battles, Ethan allowed himself to dream of a future where the stars weren't endless threats, but endless possibilities.